Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
What a beautiful day to focus on my dreams, on my goals. How are you? How's it going? Seems pretty nice right now. We got a whole bunch of my friends because I was like, I don't know, nobody wanted to talk about Israel. That seems like the thing this week. Jim, Team Rabbit Hole. You guys remember Team Rabbit Hole? It's like the greatest podcast that ever was. One of my favorites. Raphael and Jim used to make a lot of episodes. I think they still do. Team Rabbit Hole. And then there's Gunwoo, who is with us right now. How you doing, Gunwoo? Am I not able to hear anything? I feel like Oh, okay. I was like, that.
Oh wait, shit! I was muted. My bad.
Yeah, it happens. How you been, bro? You alive?
Yeah, just like been sluggish this past few weeks.
Yeah, we hear you, Jim.
Oh, there, Jim. Now we can hear you. Cool. We didn't hear you either. I think everyone's testing their microphones right now. That's pretty brilliant. Kurt, what have you been doing?
Freaking noobs, man, get your shit together.
The only person who's got their life on track is Mark.
Of course, dude.
Have you seen anything this week that made you not want to, do you see anything that made you want to live this week? Anything beautiful?
Are you talking to me or are you talking to Gunwoo?
Mark, you.
Did Gunwoo even answer your question or you just skip over him?
No, I just cut it. Do you have any idea how miserable people have made Gunwoo in his life? He's had to scrub bunk beds covered in black mold.
Don't get me started,
while just saying, I am nothing. You don't know what Gunwoo's done. So he is a very powerful person.
Super expensive webcam, the Elgato. I don't know. It was more expensive than the usual shit.
Wait. Let me
took the bed out of nowhere.
That's the one that's supposed to be amazing to zoom in on. I'm not getting a commercial for it. It broke. What am I even doing now? It's terrible.
My old C920 that's 10 years old is still working, but this piece of shit after a year and a half just stops responding.
It's very frustrating.
It's planned obsolescence is getting worse with each year. I'm finding.
I don't know what that means, but yeah.
Planned obsolescence? It's where they.
Yeah. I don't understand it. All right.
Yeah. Well, all right. Have you guys been paying attention to anything in the world that makes you happy? Is there anything that you can think of that makes you happy?
Dianne Feinstein died.
Yeah. That was the last. Okay, that was the last contemporary event I think that made me really happy. So it seems like what's going on is they're trying to aim all the media right now to make us want. What is it that they look like they want us to have? Is it
they want us dead?
Do they want us dead, or do they want us to to justify killing? Right? Does it seem like if that's the main focus point right now is just generally to justify killing? Is that what this week's about?
Honestly,
on a general level.
I mean, having a military background, I'm usually caught up in wars and the geopolitical narratives and the history behind why the war happened, etc. But with this recent Israeli conflict, I genuinely don't know. I've been looking into it, seeing usually conflicts like these are a false flag, right? But then I've been looking to see if it was to see what the conspiracy is behind any of this, and this seems genuine. Hamas actually did this.
Well, yeah, but that's what I think is really interesting is people confuse false flags with unreal. Just because you get a bunch of kids on YouTube from Minnesota and guns from the United States government, right, and go to a country, and then those people in that country call themselves Hamas, right? But a lot of the Hamas are not. They're not Palestinians. A lot of Palestinians have moved away 100 years ago. So these are people that are going there for this cause, and they're empowered by what we just talked about $8 billion from Germany a year, or was it less?
Jesus
Some crazy the amount of money that they're going into Palestine from all of these countries that was then financing and guns and everything else. I mean, so we built whatever it is that happened, and if you listen to the tapes, you can hear, sometimes they're talking in Arabic. And then they say Allah Akbar, bro. Yeah, bro. Or excuse me, bro. There's a guy's excuse me, bro. And you hear the excuse me, bro, and you're you're from Minnesota, right? Did you see the videos about recruiting terrorists in Minnesota and in the United States and jihad tourism? Have you seen that?
I've heard about that, but I didn't really pay attention too much into it because it's all CIA ran.
Well, it used to be, but kind of it's every country, Germany, every country in the system now has a way to get these kids who are disenfranchised out. So I mean, it seems like this exists. I'm not saying no one's saying it doesn't exist, but it's just like, what's it for? Why are they? It seems like the justification here is, okay, horrible things are happening, therefore we get to go all out. Like we get to break all of our own rules. It's justified, right? That's where we're headed.
Right.
So I mean, it seems like that's the focus of this week more generally, is that we're about to see people justify the most horrible kinds of war. Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that's what there's, high levels of government is pushing for, right? Another war because of, Afghanistan ended, then Ukraine's not going too well, then you need something to pump the money, right? But with due to the general apathy of our generation and like the people generally younger than 40, I would say. I don't even know if there's going to be war support for like, or anyone gives a shit about Israel at this point.
Yeah, but it seems like there's gonna. I mean, so if China, so North Korea, China, Ukraine, like this, these are causing people to have or causing states to have to pick sides in banking.
Right. Geopolitically, yeah, governments have to pick sides, but I mean, wars don't take off. Wars isn't going to really go anywhere unless it has the general support of the people. Which after having witnessed what we have, the shit show in Afghanistan, like honestly, I don't think America or NATO in general wants the on the people end of things are even remotely prepared or wants to go to another war.
I mean, so do you think that war requires as many people as it used to, or is it true that we can use like drones to destabilize regions?
I mean, yeah, that's the general idea and the direction everyone's trying to go towards, to take the human element out of the military, so where it's all AI operated. So like things like the Skinner psychology or whatever they don't need to waste money on training people to shoot to kill, or deal with the psychological repercussions of combat afterwards. So I mean, yeah, although things like drones or whatever are effective, drones can't clear a building. They can't run a base or whatever, stuff like that. We haven't progressed enough yet in military technology to even fully rely on automation.
I'm trying to remember when I was in Bosnia this year, I saw the siege of Sarajevo Museum.
Yeah.
And so what happened during the war in Sarajevo in Bosnia was they eventually, because it was siege, they didn't let anything in or out, and so people were starving to death, and it snows there. So what they eventually did was they built this freaking giant tunnel, and I guess the UN did this, right, or something, or the CIA, or like this crazy giant tunnel, right, was built, and they were smuggling artifacts in and out for as long as they could for like 10 years during the war. This was this like infrastructural tunnel that no one knew about, and now it's just a museum. So I mean, it just seems like there's always going to be a set of resources that are going to be someone's going to have their own systems going. I don't know. But what also, Kurt, I was going to ask you, like, what are you thinking this week when you see like, hey, like people are being murdered, I should justify war, or like where are we at with our emotions about what we're seeing?
Like over 100,000 people die every day, and the fact that we're focusing on Israel, I mean, it's political. Everyone knows that already. But yeah, I'm not like being a bummer, but we're very selective when it comes to the deaths that we pay attention to, and a lot of them do happen via war and via wars that don't involve Israel. And it's I don't know. I think most people do agree that it is religiously motivated. Our hyper focus on
our government called it religiously motivated, right? I think that was an official statement. So
yeah, but
religious war.
I mean, a religious war. But we also have an obsession with Palestine. Like we're a little bit obsessed with who controls Palestine, and yeah, it's hard to believe that if there wasn't an obsession with Christianity, that we would particularly care about this particular conflict as much. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you could say about it. I think probably more people might be dying in Ukraine, but you'd have to fact check that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it turns out. So we were talking with David yesterday. It sounds like Ukraine is a lot worse than people have been thinking. Like it's not winding down; it's getting worse, perhaps. And it's just they're hiding more and more of it, but it's getting into closer and closer proximity. So it does seem like that's also interesting. That's as horrible as it is, but Israel, it's at this Egyptian border. So it just seems like so many of the stories of the wars of Revelation and everything have to do with a tipping point that's going on at that point. So you hear more and more people like talking about beginning of Revelation. Now, obviously, that's like I don't mean that even literally from like a miracle point of view. I just mean that if you've got a bunch of billionaire esotericists, because like these people have so much money that they don't care about their education. They have people to do all the real work for them. So they get to focus on just loving esotericism, right? So if they're super rich and they are super narcissistic, and all of a sudden something happens that they can equate with them being part of a prophecy, a divine prophecy, like don't you think a narcissist's going to want to play out as much of that revelation as possible just because they want to be they subconsciously even might. They're just imagining, well, this must be me. I must be the Messiah in this story, so I have to be I think that we're so likely to see like self-fulfilling prophecies right now. It's just really scary. Hey, you turn up your microphone. We can barely hear you.
I can lean into it deeper.
Let me see if I can
I think your microphone settings are wrong, Jim. Maybe
Yeah,
switch the
it's
microphone.
Here.
the
That's
gain
what it sounds
settings.
like.
Keep talking. I'm fixing it for you. Go ahead.
To figure things out. I got this.
I'm pretty sure you're on your laptop mic, Jim. I think that's the reason.
Boomers! Boomers!
Mark, you're gonna have to just talk for him. Can
Boomer alert!
you lip sync for Jim while
Are
he's
we,
speaking?
are we talking about Israel, dude? Are we really talking about Israel?
No, I was so hard trying to talk about like the world as an emotional thing, and it was like I was like,
Religious
can we-
fanaticism. And
Can
how
we
it
like
comes to
lead
be.
it into a more general? You know what?
I was going to mention Hitler because I'm
Oh.
pretty sure he. Maybe you can hear me now.
loud,
Adolf
as loud
Hitler,
as you could. Mark's
yeah.
like running away. All
well,
right.
I'm pretty sure he believed, the failed artist was in World War One. So I remember very vaguely hearing that all of his buddies got blown up in a grenade thing, and he survived, and he imprinted a program of identity to that, and then ran off and did his thing. So I don't think it's particularly. I don't know if it's billionaire esotericists always pushing the fucking the teleological thing to the omega point. We're all going down the river, and it seems that I was looking at the astrology. It's, guys, it's Mars. What is it? It's Libra season. Bunch of Virgo stuff. Mercury's in Libra. Mars is in Libra at the last fucking degree. So it's like, this is pushing. In a sense, it's kind of iterating. Do we want to do the same song and dance as 100 years prior to us? Basically, we have a chance to kind of see this differently and not pick Pepsi or Coke. I mean, we can get to another tier of analysis, but that takes decision making at a very fundamental internal level. Anyway, I don't even have a pig in this race. Basically, pig of all the animals I just said. I don't think either group likes pigs, but it's a shit show, and it's. I don't know. I'm not paying attention, but you were kind of going off on like billionaires are engineering this. It's like Bezos has a fucking clock in the desert that it maybe is more important than Bilderberg pushing this. But at this point, it's a Terrence McKenna situation where nobody's in control, and there's a shit ton of fires going on everywhere at multi levels. And I think we're just here to watch it unfold.
Yeah, the original patriarchs that kept the House of Cards together up until the 80s are all dying away with all these like millennial trust fund Burning Man type people.
Like Mitt Romney, he's
right,
like, hey,
right.
we can't drive the ship. Where's that cane?
They're inheriting all this, and as Andreas said, these people have no real education or any tangible life experience because having grown up in that cushy upper class lifestyle, having everyone having done stuff for you, with those kind of people inheriting the new power, which is why we're seeing everything fall apart towards accelerationism as they're losing their grip.
Everything's gonna be fine because Cenk Uygur is running for president. So Don't worry.
Are you guys paying attention to presidential politics? I haven't even thought about that. I was like,
Cenk Uygur,
shit,
dude, he's
it's
gonna
a
save the
cycle?
world. Jim, I don't know what your
I
problem
actually
is, dude.
forgot. Like you need for
Time is
people
so
like us,
fucked right
you
now.
might have. I only kind of, if you'd said like the Young Turks were running for president, because like also that would have been a good double entendre. But like I don't like him, so thou
Oh, you
shalt
don't
not
like him?
use.
He's got sand in his sandals. He
You
definitely
don't
has
like
an
Cenk
attitude.
Uygur? What's wrong with you, dude?
What about okay? All right, something that we can all agree is important and good. First contact with Bigfoot, right? Like that happened. Did you guys see that yesterday?
What?
Yeah. So I don't know about first contact. Calm down. But
like actually, holy
no, I
shit!
don't. This is a great footage though, right? Check this out. So let me pull it to the very beginning. There's this. Can you see that? I wish I could zoom in for you. This is all over
Colorado? Where is that?
It's like 4.4 million views in Colorado.
But how do we know this is Bigfoot? Like I have nothing to compare the size to.
Well, I mean, he looks like.
bro.
And at this distance, it could just be a skin suit. I'm
Right.
sorry.
But I know, but at least it's in 4K. This is the highest quality.
Right, it's the highest quality.
It's upscaled 4K and suddenly it has
Yeah.
4 million views.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
X.
It's a pretty easy prank to pull off. It's not very complicated.
But I mean,
You're alone on this one, Andreas.
we generally know that the Bigfoot types races are real. We have them recorded all throughout history. But
right.
The question boils down to, are they still alive?
And do they have them in Colorado in places where you would randomly like be flying low enough? Like, how low would he have to be flying to see?
That was a train.
It's a train. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a train.
Okay.
So basically, a dude in a Bigfoot suit went and stood by where the train was going to go by. I mean,
that's rad. We should do that.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot of fun. I guess.
I don't know about Bigfoot, but I met a dude with a big dick one time. So
why didn't you notice his feet? I wonder. Huh.
I mean, how could you look at his feet when you got that big of a dick?
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Gunwoo, you were about to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that like the closest evidence that I found towards proving Bigfoot legitimacy is the Sasquatch Genome Project. I don't know if you the Sasquatch Genome Project. I'll put in the private chat.
Okay.
They get spit samples? What happened here?
Here we go.
No, apparently the people behind this project actually have legitimate fucking DNA samples of Sasquatches.
What? That's what's up.
They seem pretty
the
legitimate.
site looks legit, I have to say.
Actually, yeah. Be honest,
to CNN.
The site looks like those early Web 1, Web 2 sites, whatever.
It's like, this is the kind of site, like I remember, like you'd see like a pizza website. You know, it kind of looks like there's a lot more behind this HTML page. Like
right, if you click on all the hyperlinks, like if you click on View DNA Study or Supplemental Raw Data, that shit's insane, bro.
No, it's
who's
chill.
supporting it? It's like supporters.
Yeah,
Iran.
Is Soros involved? I'm kind of confused. This looks like a little. I don't know. It looks like something I would make, or
this looks like the Team Rabbit Hole website, Raphael.
Yeah,
right.
No hate.
Yeah, this is honestly the closest legit evidence that I found towards
this is very
proving.
Legit website here. Actually, I'm digging it. So supplemental raw data. The sequences on this page may not be the same length as those in the manuscript due to the end trim that was done in order to effectively blast these sequences. As a result, the sequences might appear to be different than those in the manuscript from original.
They're kind of covering their ass. They're like, we use fonts that are weird. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Like this looks like a UCSC student made this website, like a grad student. It's just like I had to get my data on a page real quick.
Probably some like 30-year-old hippie in Colorado. That actually had an interest in affinity.
Oh, they use Windows. It's sad, but that's okay. It's okay.
That orange-haired Batman shooter in Colorado, it was a 2-part thing, and this is the other guy. He's the underground version. It's like one guy went public and one guy went private.
Well, I mean, why is there so much effort going into freaking Bigfoot then? Like, if you think it's just also silly.
Autism? I don't know. But
that's like a fundamental answer to most things these days, I feel.
It's that fucking COVID vaccine, bro.
How did they get DNA samples? How did they come across DNA samples?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like, how do they have so much data? How do they have any of this? And then the people behind this project seem legit to an extent. I don't know.
Look at this.
The website doesn't give them much credibility.
confidence.
I
aware,
go the
but-
other direction. I think the website gives me a certain amount of credibility because it's like they're not selling anything.
Yeah,
here.
they're more genuine.
Yeah, this looks like this is academic.
They're on their
website.
full schizophrenic trip.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they're
But yeah,
committed.
there's a contact us page if you want to get this guy on this show. If you want.
Yes, let's
Really?
do
Dr.
that. I will
Ketchum.
join.
Is that what he looks like? Is
Oh,
that
fuck.
Dr. Ketchum right there? Oh my God, Dr. Ketchum is Bigfoot. Okay, all right. Well, we'll have to try to do that. That seems.
But I know we were discussing this in the group chat, the Facebook group chat, Andreas. But the brief mentioned the possibility that that Bigfoot could be survival races from Asia. The possibility with a link with the Wu Sun. And like, yeah, there's been people speculating, especially on Coast to Coast, saying that the guttural tones of the Sasquatch noises or screams are like very akin to like Chinese tonal or like East Asian tonal languages.
You have to be careful when you show pictures of Bigfoot. You have to make sure you have moderate search on. It's pretty bad these days. It's getting worse. I don't know. Did you ever see the Star Wars Christmas special?
No. Oh yeah. That shit was cringy as hell.
Yeah, but the more I think about it, the more I think it's like kind of real. Like that Chewbacca.
Oh, Chewbacca?
Christmas. Yeah, Chewbacca's family. You see Chewbacca's family and little Chewbacca.
I mean, I did mention the Wu Sun that like stream long ass time ago, having and like all those artistic depictions of the past of the Wu Sun all depict them very similarly.
Okay, so what is the Wu Sun? It's like an ancient nomadic steppe people, but they're
right.
They're more than just humanoid. They're like a different hominid.
So
how far back?
Speculation whether or not they are like hominids or a different race is, contended. Whether
folklore.
There's a speculation that it could be like Nephilim or whatever due to them having red hair, green eyes, and having hair all over their body as well. If you go down further, there's like an illustration of what they look like.
The gold thing, or here we go.
No.
What?
Yeah. I'm saying, like,
I think I qualify as one.
There's just pictures like this all over Asia.
Sorry, I didn't. No offense, Jim.
No, I'm red-haired and furry all over. It's like this. I'm like, hey, maybe they're Tartarian.
Well, but
right, that's what I'm saying.
But the claws, bro.
Right.
Claws. I don't know.
That's for dramatic effect.
Mark,
let's not your babies.
Mark, do you think that there were people like you saw Waterworld? Mark, do you believe that there are people that like look as close to human but not quite? Like that there was ever anything that was not quite human but kind of human-like?
Well, if you're talking about like pre-humans, yeah, there was all kinds of weird pre-humans, right?
Okay, but like, did they all have to die out for the humanoids to graduate, or like, were we?
I don't think they did. I think we just like kept banging each other till we.
Yeah, right.
Honestly, I don't think it's even like these humanoids come from a human origin. But like, if you go down the Comprachicos rabbit hole, the things that Mind Unveiled has been discussing lately, about like how back then we had genetic manipulation capabilities to a certain extent. Just how
you mean like alchemical weird stuff and like
like homunculi type shit or whatever. Like mermaids were once real because people actually bred fish and people together.
Well, that's not just Book of Jacob stuff. I feel like it's weird how people...
it's Jakub and fucking Enochian.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. All right. And no, make sure moderate search.
And
is
the
on
film
here.
Lamb.
So terrible. But the film Lamb? I have not seen that film Lamb.
Oh, it's an A24 film. I haven't seen it, but I watched the synopsis.
Is it about like?
I don't want to get into. Should I spoil it for everybody?
Go right ahead. I don't know if I know. Oh, it's sweet. It's Scandinavian.
Icelandic, yeah.
Yeah, it looks all right. Long story short, basically, she can't have a baby, and then they have a child. I think it walks. It's got a human body and a lamb head, and basically, people from the mountains who are hybrid goat people come and take it back.
What? I want to see this.
That's the whole spiel. Yeah, it's like it's a weird ending.
That seems key. I don't know. We talked at some point about like the black Scientologist equivalent, Dianetics Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan was promoting.
That's very Klingon-esque.
Yeah, and so so people are. I remember I tried to recently explain this on Base AF because people thought of Nation of Islam as being the same thing as Islam, and I'd been in. Who knows if I get in trouble for this now? But I just remember in like 5th grade when I did the Muhammad Ali wrestler presentation. So I was supposed to talk about one of the most influential people in history in school. I had to explain what the Nation of Islam is, and they literally stopped me because I like was explaining to them what it was, and they're like, "No, stop!" I'm like, no, but this is their thing. Like, no, stop. It's like, but they believe that Jakob created white people over centuries in this laboratory. Stop. I don't know if I'm supposed to get the lesson even now. I feel like I'm getting hit even remembering it now.
Then not only that, all this Yakub stuff has been over hyperbolized with the Afrocentrist communities,
Right.
saying everybody's black or whatever. It's I get sure humanity didn't come from a single origin point, and then you have scientists trying to argue the whole out of Africa theory. But if anyone has with half a brain looks into it any further, they realize that
there's a gene flow. There's gene flow of
right, and then the humanity's origin point after the flood was the Pannonian Basin, the Scythia essentially. The Indo-European migrations, the whole Israelite lore, 12er Shiism, all that stuff. Yeah, it comes from the Pannonian Basin. But yeah, the Comprachicos, what I linked earlier in the private chat. This is what Mind Unveils was talking about not long ago, about how back then people genuinely had the capability of modifying children to the extent where they created hunchbacks for entertainment.
Yeah, like dwarfs and
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that's
then
freaks. They made freaks.
Scientists say these days it all comes from fucking genetic whatever, the Punnett square type shit, recessive genes, all that. It's all bullshit. It's people back then had them we're just getting residue manipulation being passed on today.
Wait, you think that by getting by breaking people's backs, that they have epigenetically changed the DNA of to create hunchbacks? Is that the idea?
They weren't breaking them. They were surgically manipulating them somehow, alchemically, to the extent where their genes have been permanently altered.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I feel like, okay. Do you think that that's kind of the metaphor there? Because if you go back even further, the metaphor is like Isis with a staff with two snakes and a double helix.
Right. It ties all the way back that far.
Genetic. It seems like it might be that they're cutting your bones. They might be that they're just
Ecclesiastes 1, man. There's nothing new in the sun. Everyone's saying that CRISPR is breakthrough technology or whatever, when we have documentation of genetic manipulation stretching as far back as the Ottomans, even.
Hopefully we get Jim back. What do you think about the idea of angel genetic manipulation, Kurt? Like the idea that humanity's. I was gonna ask Kurt also. Yeah. Do you think you were manipulated?
The whole Anunnaki stuff.
Yeah.
I've heard so much about it. I've looked into it myself and all, but it's just I can't find any concrete about the Anunnaki. It would be interesting. Would definitely explain the missing link or the genetic jump between monkeys and humans. But I don't even know if monkeys are related to humans. I feel like intelligent design is more legitimate, if anything. But if that was the case, who designed us? So, and that kind of opens up the rabbit hole of bringing credence to the Anunnaki story. But I mean, I'm more so leaning towards the existence of God, if anything.
Kurt, American Time Machine. What do you think? Intelligent design?
It depends on how philosophical you want to get. I don't know about aliens. I just think if you want to get down deep into spiritual reality and you believe in all that, then you could see all life forms as kind of a tool just to a spiritual end. Everything in the animal kingdom, really, because I think at the end of the day, we are definitely subservient to forces that we do not understand. Because the fact that you can pretty much, I won't say quantify personality, but I think once you've experienced so many things, it seems like you can start to quantify your emotions and experiences, and a lot of them just play out themselves and replay themselves. And the only way to define some things in life is to define them as spiritual. So, and I think that just more comes with life experience. And they say that you really do just find God at the personal level, and you can't really share those experiences with anybody. But if we are really subservient to that spiritual reality, then yes, then everything else is subservient, and that includes our genetics. And even, maybe we just overestimate the real value of genetics at the end of the day, because, I mean, they're cool and they're very complicated, but we might we might have gotten too sciencey when it comes to our explanations when it comes to genetics, in my personal opinion.
Right, but on the other side of that coin, right, you get the empirical perspective where it's everything based, like everything that we know up to this point from evolutionary or genetic science. But I mean, we know from evolution, but we know that evolutionary theory is public information, that it has its origin in theosophy. It has no scientific basis at all. Charles Darwin wrote his book Origin of Species, while being at the house of Alice Bailey, while being in personal contact with her constantly. But Charles Darwin, after being a failed theologian, he was trying to follow the footsteps of his father, whom was a pastor, and he failed to,
he wanted visions and he didn't get them. And also, he had a boyfriend. I don't know. Are you allowed to talk about John?
I didn't know about the boyfriend part.
John Edmondson. He had a black boyfriend. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Who was way better than him at everything and was a taxidermist. He was a taxidermist from Guyana, and he lived in a little bungalow next by him and everything. And but yeah, John Edmondson was a brilliant taxidermist, and Darwin based most of his theories he could on his. But I just wanted to say, like, just because Darwin gets credit for the theory of evolution doesn't mean he came up with it or that he did it right. Usually the popularist isn't the person who comes with the theory. And so there's always better examples. I would say Jean-Baptiste Lamarck is about consciousness evolution, and Teilhard Chardin is like a more practical form of evolution.
Very much aware. Pretty much Charles Darwin has this colloquially attached to the theory of evolution because he's pretty much Einsteined it. You know, he got the marketing.
Right. Which sucks because it's also Alice Bailey, and at the same time that he's going on his boat is the other one, the lady, Helena Blavatsky. Helena Blavatsky's on her boat at the same. They're like, if they're not on the same boat, they're like ships in the night because literally, I mean,
right. But the point I was trying to lead towards is like with the things we know about the Monroe Institute and the MK Ultra and stuff like that. How does evolution explain for telekinesis and our I'm
gonna pull up a picture of Helena
other
psychological
psychic phenomenons that we can't explain?
Pink Trip, what do you think about this lady? When you see this lady, what do you think? What have you seen his face before?
She has the same eyes as the dude from Vice who used to eat a whole lot of shit.
I think she probably cooks really well.
The rapper.
She probably makes some mean soup or something like that. But I think when it comes to the universe, like the creation, I think like it's pretty simple. God is just a giant dick, and the universe is a giant vagina.
Oh, I thought you were a jerk. Okay.
Bang the universe, and then that's how we came into creation.
Whoa! So in other words, you agree with Helena Blavatsky? That's amazing. I didn't know that. You're a resurrection.
This is like panspermia theories, or like
I'm a genius, dude.
Yeah, you are. That's what's crazy.
I didn't even know who or what that was.
Yeah, what's crazy is like that's like the most ultimate form of Gnostic sophism. I think what you just said in a sense. I think
it's funny.
Like,
of course, that's already a theory. Of course, it is.
That's the theory. It's like the ultimate cosmogony. That's like the belief of the universe being created, right? That's it. That's why we exist.
The Shiva Shakti thing. It's like everything's fucking all the time.
Yeah.
Polarity exchange occurs in dynamic toroidal
every animal you hear chirping or whatever, bird, bug screaming in the it's all just screaming.
I was thinking about that yesterday, and I felt really perverted just thinking about crickets, like listening to other crickets, because someone's saying that a lot of animals don't visually put off signals, but I think if you think about how crickets like make that noise, and all the other crickets are listening to it, they're all doing it because they all want to mate. So every one of them. I don't know.
I mean, that's the joke, right? All of culture is just an extension of mating ritual. I mean, we're basically bored fucking animals, potentially. Presuming that, this is funny. Raphael's always been like, fuck it. I don't believe in evolution to some degree, and I don't want to speak for you. And I've always been kind of on the fence, but I feel like you're teetering into that domain of like, what is an agenda? How would it form? Models of reality are helpful, but they're programmatic and indoctrinative, like you're saying, to the degree that we've been given these things and kind of said, run with it. And I mean, I'm not in a place where I'm like, I don't believe in evolution. I think it's reasonable enough to think I'm not tripping on that. But when you start getting into hey, it's coming from Blavatsky. Hey, it's coming from all
any idea that you cannot play with, I believe to be delusional. I don't know. I think you need to be able to play with an idea in order to understand if it's can be practical enough to be useful to be true. And also, I think well, I'll just leave it with that. But if you can't play with an idea, it's bad probably. And if you're afraid of playing with the idea, that's also not useful. Because if you just get in an echo chamber and you can't consider the opposing perspective, I don't
want to sound too woo about it, but it's like if you get enough people aggregating towards an energy point of cultural ideation, essentially, that's how you make things occur. That there's your esoteric billionaire club. I mean, maybe it started happening in the 1830s or whatever the fuck.
Right, the manifestation stuff, yeah.
I mean, the Moonchild shit and Bush and all that. I don't even want to go into it, but
we can. Jack Parsons, go ahead. No, it's fine.
It's just the whole trip is like. I mean, this is why I kind of stopped podcasting. I was like, I can't go further than this because I have not been to space, and I don't want. It's clear this is a Masonic ritual. It's clear Parsons started it, and then so anyway, I don't need to go down that. But
actually, I think I'd much rather. I think we honestly should just do that because I've been thinking a lot about that recently. Jack Parsons. Moonchild ritual and the people involved with the ritual, right? Like the fact that they tried to, a lot of people say that it was a person that's manifested, but also the idea that, do you know anything about this, Mark? That there's like the guy who invented rockets was a Satanist, essentially he's a Thelemic.
A pan enthusiast. Let's get it straight.
Yeah, well, he was worried that this demon, Choronzon, was chasing him everywhere. And so he sent a bunch of paperwork to Werner von Braun, and like he had a Japanese friend who got kicked out of the country and started working on the bomb for the World War II for the bad guys, a lot of, I don't know about the bad guys, because the bad guys are entrepreneurial. But point is, we have like a pentagram in Lockheed Martin's like logo because of this satanic rocket.
Or all the astrological stuff, Gemini, Apollo missions.
I think it's a better question for Raphael. He's got the mustache for it.
Well, I just wondering if because it's good to understand. What do you?
I think normies are in denial. The billionaires are even concerned with esotericism when like all of them are pretty much subscribed to it. They have been since the whole the Bavarian Illuminati movement with German Enlightenism and all that shit. Like that was a recruitment tactic to specifically recruit rich people. That's where the whole tradition started of getting rich people interested in all this stuff.
But Jack Parsons wasn't rich, and so that was why they blew him up. Probably. I mean, he did a lot of really great stuff for them, and then they were like, "Yeah, we don't need you anymore.
We don't need that pretty boy face. Let's just."
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Jim. Like, what did you think happened with what have you been extrapolating about Jack Parsons?
Me?
Yeah,
I haven't thought about this dude in a fucking hot minute. But the point remains. It seems there's like fractal points, and this gets into Tartarian resets and all shit that I don't look into. But it's like, all right, there's a few key moments in engineering culture, and if you can pull it off, you get a big old generational Reagan economics culturally or whatever. It's like, have you
ever watched Trancers? Do you remember this movie and series? There's like 10 of them. No. Trancers 9, Trancers, The Return of Jack Death. Never seen
worst
Trancers?
Name ever.
Oh, Trancers or Jack Death? I don't know, because Trancers is a great name. I like
Jack
it.
Death.
Yeah, Helen Hunt when she was young. Oh man, it's a great show. Okay,
so where are you trying to go with this?
I'm just gonna like meditate on how much I like it for a second and go. Okay, so the thing about Trancers is that it's a time travel show where the world's gotten really bad in the future. It's like 2070, 300. I don't know. It's like not doing great. You can't eat a lot. You have to eat like pills. You're not allowed to smoke or anything. It's like LA for it's like LA. Shanghai.
We're on track.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's where we're going. And so this guy gets sent back in time because you got to like fix things. And there's people that are also going back in time that are bad, or these like AI humanoids that are like transhumated so much they're post-human and they're basically more machine than man, and they're going back and they're trying to mess up the timeline because they want to set it up to make it better for them in the future, because like you get rid of everybody else and then it'll be easy for them. So there's like competing timeline thing. And so Jack Death, he's got to go back in time. So what he does is he like quantum leaps. He has to find his great grandson, and because you can only leap into your own genetics, right? And that way he's trying to fix the timeline, and he's doing it, and he goes back and forth 1981, 1982. It's amazing, right? And then there's people that are trying to destroy him. But it seems like, and I've been thinking about this more and more because we're talking about like who would be most likely to time travel or to like aliens come in and talk to you or all this stuff, right? It seems like the most likely person who would help you would be somebody who's dependent on your existence. So if it's someone down the line, like your great great grandson or something like that, it's like the Marty McFly Back to the Future scenario is the most likely scenario for you to have a protagonistic helper, right? It's not likely that an alien's going to do that because the alien's more likely to want to help itself. A demon's more likely to want to help itself. Like, so it seems
we
like
are assuming dominance hierarchy principles here. It's like it's self-interested. It's like, what if there's aliens there aren't? But anyway, keep going.
I'm always interested in that. Like, what do you think why would something exist that's not self-interested? And what would be the mechanism that makes that practical?
If there's a giant cosmic dick fucking everything, there's probably a receptive energy form equally opposite, and that would mean there's probably levels of evolution occurring in a receptive nature as opposed to a dominant nature. But I don't know. I don't even know if I believe in aliens. So whatever.
It's unfortunate due to having grown up in the generation of capitalist realism that we all assume that everything in life operates through their own self-interest or survival. When all the motifs and not motifs, shit. The cultural habitus of not even 200 years ago was all about the greater good type shit.
That is the mantra of the Tau, which is a similar spelling in Warhammer 40k. It's the greater good. If you know, you know. That's what's up.
You've been reading a lot of Warhammer. I think we need to get a little deeper into Warhammer lore. Does anybody know?
It's a mirror. It's a mirror. The whole thing about the Tau, I don't need to go off on that rabbit hole. This shit's crazy. They're basically how do you get Gundam anime into a universe that's already built off of like dark Star Wars stuff?
And also it's time. It's for the far future. This is like post-human transhumanism. Like they've evolved. They're like using technology. This is kind of where we're going. They're kind of like super humanoid because of evolution. Like all of these ideas of like our far future. It's transfers for bigger kids, probably.
I'm realizing how absurd it is now that we're looking at all this stuff, and it's like, whatever. G.I. Joe on crack is epic. The long story short, these are fish people from another like planet. We meet them, and basically they have, it's kind of a Eastern Asian kind of thing going, obviously here, where they're the greater good. But the irony is, it's almost like communism, where it's like they actually have a psychic parasite, driving them to believe this. They don't actually believe in the greater good.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they're like, it's like they're psychically manipulated, but if you don't see the fucking guy behind the curtain, or you don't believe he's there,
because I don't know if you know about the parasite tangent and all that stuff. There's a whole community of people within this, I guess.
Not toxoplasmosis. It's like
yeah, stuff like that. How pretty much like hair worms and other stuff. Like
they run the world.
Yeah.
And even
or the Vril, right?
Well, yeah, exactly, on the Vril level too, because the idea of you've seen those Russian Tartaria videos, and their idea was that we're living in a matrix. Essentially, the matrix is like we're living in a Naraka. We're living in like a time hell kind of thing, and Matrix is like this too. It's about suffering. We're in a suffering zone because that makes it more. Samsara is important. Well, yeah, it's like samsara is the lowest form of Naraka. We might be in samsara. But we might be just in a Naraka. It could be just like a kind of Naraka, like a kind of hell dimension that is suffering so that it drives your attention to it enough that you don't ascend into a higher awareness of what's going on.
The wallpaper in the prison is so appealing.
Well, and this is like everybody's version of it, right? So we were talking about Philip K. Dick and the idea that we're living in 50 AD, that we're living in like it's right after Jesus died, but the demons have projected this reality, and so we're seeing like electricity. It's a good excuse for what is happening, right? So we have this idea that this is all practical, and that way you can deny what's going on, what is true, just simply because the material reality around you is a lie, right?
What's up, Raphael? You there?
I'm listening.
This is his jam. He's like, reality?
Jim and me both know what this is about.
As somebody said, I'm jealous of his mustache. I definitely am jealous of his mustache.
Everybody's jealous of his mustache. I tried it. I couldn't handle it.
Number two, I was just trying to get him in the conversation. I was feeling bad for him. I haven't heard him talk
Thank
once.
you.
He's a caterpillar. This is how he rolls.
Yeah, well, I'm just listening. These are all things. So about the time health thing, some of you know I've been doing lots of interviews with David, and just the things he's been showing. That's also why I'm kind of quiet, because the aliens are dead for me by now. We don't know where we are. We don't know how much land there is, and we certainly can't really verify any of the history, whether it's quite recent or is somewhat more ancient. Just like Ganwu also said with evolutionary theory, many of these things, if you look at it a bit more and check some of the proof, so many things, and the issue is so many common tropes fall apart, because how much idea is based on whatever Einstein said, whatever the whole space race is, evolutionary theory, I can't even name all of it, but so many common cultural references when you get down to it. Oh, again, it's invented by some theosophists or some Jesuits.
Right.
How many elements can we even draw upon, especially that are just accepted as is and not debated because everybody knows? And you look closer, and again, it's the same group. They made the language, they made the history, they made the nation state, they faked up the religions. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, which is where I'm just listening and like
the age of tribulations, man.
But I mean, you got to be careful. You got to be careful because when you start throwing babies out with the baptismal water, then you lose your religion. And so you can say there's no aliens, but if you ever met a Bosnian,
Wait, Raphael,
you know
did you say there's no aliens in your ontology now? I haven't talked to you in like 6 months.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. Well, I'm saying
I'm not going to pin you on a cross on this, just to kind of explain what you mean by that.
The point being is there can be all kinds of forms and so on and entities, but by now I'd be more inclined to assume they're either coming from underwater, from beyond the known lands, or from underground, than, for example, from anywhere outer space. But it's just
like
simply that
you gotta
every common trope, and
reframe
just to
your
make it
paradigm,
simple. Of course, I'm just saying, like, every common trope we know most likely has some truth behind it, but we can pretty much assume that the mainstream and even mainstream alternative ideas presented about it are somewhat fudged or forged or faked up. So,
they're bell curves for the consciousness of people in the middle, and then the wokest people go, "I don't need y'all," and then go off in the hermitages, and then the dumbest people,
you have to go very fast, very far. Yeah, indeed.
Is that fucking Slaughterhouse 5 like meets Baby Cat Patch Kids? What the fuck is that?
I mean, it's so like we're looking at worlds inside out. Let's start with the Koreshian model, right? Like we got to start thinking about how things are inside, not outside, or they're both at the very least. If they're outside, they're at very least also inside. And these are like snow globes of worlds, right? We're in a funhouse pit, I would say, with snow globes of worlds, of everything. And yeah, the idea of aliens is interesting to me because I live in a place where if you live literally like 100 miles away, you're an alien, like you're an illegal alien even. So it's not that different than when the Pope is saying he's God, in the 10th century and whatever. Like recently in your video, they're talking about how the Pope was like referred to as God. And so when God said this and that, a lot of the time it's the freaking Pope, which is an important point because not only that, there's like lies, like I think it's in the 10th century, right, is when the pseudo-Isidorian decrees come out and it says, and then the Pope said this, and they didn't even say it, and then saying that God said that you have to be celibate so we can take over all of your towns and not let anyone have, not let any of these priesthood families continue, right, so that we could control as soon as the next generation go on, they can just move in and take them because the priests aren't allowed to have kids anymore. And like, well, look, you've never been allowed to, even though they've been doing it for 1,000 years. Just make up that it wasn't happening anymore. It's like God said it, right? So
right.
But that doesn't mean that there's not something there. It just changes the name of it and the paradigm of it. Like, so then you're like, okay, I don't trust the modern narrative of what's going on, but turn it inside out. Continue to play with it. Like, because if you say there's nothing, you can't play with it anymore. And so I think that thought is probably a bad thought.
That's what my mom told me when I was a kid.
Or in like the Zazen thing, it's a pregnant nothing.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be funny, Mimri. Jesus Christ, Mimri.
I'm glad you're still a boy, Mark. It could have gone worse.
He's an internal time traveler.
So they say.
Okay, so people are like, no aliens, no Bigfoot. Reality is just being ignored. I don't know. Okay, well, what is reality then? Like, what are you saying is reality? Like, is reality like a bunch of videos that you're seeing on the internet about things happening elsewhere?
In a nutshell, I actually think most of the things are much more exciting and grand and great and magic and amazing and fun and loving. But the thing is, they always put some, faked up story in front of it to funnel all the attention towards it. So all the other stuff doesn't even get explored. That's kind of the impression I'm having.
Well, do you think do you think we're about to experience anything divine or miraculous or like unnatural, like supernatural? Do you think
dragons,
like,
bro?
What's the supernatural that you're expecting then? If you think that aliens are gone, is God back? What's up?
Well, even here we would have to define what would be supernatural. I'm not even sure if that's a correct, definition, or if that's not a very much constructed idea where we differentiate between what is natural according to Einsteinian law,
Right,
or
right.
what would be the thing. So, and I'm sure there's all kinds of things. The best example, I mentioned this before here with the Mandela effect. Anyone who has their personal experience can see, okay, there's something going on even across time. Things are changing, people remember things differently, so there is something huge going on, but nobody has exactly figured out yet what it actually is. My generic assumption with all the shenanigans going on, in any case still, and this may be the positive message, is that humans have much more power, both through their actions and their consciousness and attitude, than we are led to believe. And all of the stage play is just going on to keep people distracted from focusing on their reality, improving lives for themselves and their surroundings, and keep waiting for some politician or some alien or some pope to fix things for them. And I think that's the basic goal, whilst of course the populace is getting divided against each other through the forged history, forged conflicts, just to distract again from, maybe this is the point you made, Andreas, self-interest. Maybe this is all just a big show to distract people from their natural self-interest for themselves and their fellow humans, because that's really what it looks like. People are not acting in their self-interest when they're following a politician or whatever else it is, religious factionalism, nationalism, all of that.
Herd instincts exist, and I think people take advantage of that. That's basically what's happening. So it's like this is an ancient herd instinct fighting pit called the Middle East, and a lot of people have vested interests in multiple levels on it. And the funny thing is, in Revelation or whatever what you were saying, Raphael or Andreas, it does talk about basically it's like the world will kind of turn on like their cold shoulder Israel. Like Israel's going to be kind of fucked, and basically the world. And that's kind of what's happening.
It's really practical, like for somebody who's in that circumstance, like, so they're like, I'm Israel, so like I could be Israel, and like that means I'm God's chosen thing. That's the thing about it, is like if you start painting the paradigm, then the paradigm can live itself out. I think it's also a thing, like you can self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, self-fulfilling, and then how many people with whatever resources or power simply love that stage play so much that they
emphasis
are doing
on
everything
their self
to bring it about. And the main core actually being, and this even goes back with the mainstream Christianity and so on, is always when you start saying someone or something is better than someone else. A religion, a people's, an individual, a politician, whatever it is. And then through this, you justify suppressing and effing over everybody else. And that's always this same pattern, I would say.
I think there's a little, okay, so I've been talking to people that are into like evil and good and magic and science and that whole thing. I think like radio for evil and radio for good is probably happening. Like, and maybe also I've always thought that because Reagan let a bunch of psychos out of the prisons when I was like a very small child. So my earliest memories, plus being in Silicon Valley, was, people with earpieces that you couldn't see, or crazy people, and you never knew if someone was talking to God, the devil, the CIA, or themselves, so it was just a lot as a child. But I lost my train of thought. No, I think that radio evil, like the idea of possession, and that people are trying to do something that's like, if you try to do what's right, like you're trying not to hurt people, you're trying to protect children, like there's some things, like you're trying to help proliferate goodness, and you're trying to keep badness from harming goodness. I feel like there's a couple things there, but maybe it's like love. Like, I think they asked Jesus in the Bible like 180 questions, and he answers 8 of them, and none of them the way they wanted to be answered, So it's not always about having answers. I think he also asks like 1,000 questions or something, or more, 7,000 questions. So it's more about asking questions when people think they have answers, I think, is the thing. So if a group of people, and like we call them a church or whatever, priesthood or something, like the Boy Scouts, like some group of people like America, they're trying to be good, and they make some rules and they start trying to follow them. And then all of a sudden they start killing and eating babies in circumstances, right? Because there are like 3 times in the Bible where they eat their own babies. And there's
Lamentations, I think. They're like, we
Yeah.
don't have any food.
And
like, really?
or also they're afraid when they're being invaded. Like the temple's been torn down. They're like, don't let them take your eat them. Eat your don't let them don't let them eat your babies. You eat your babies. Like there's some weird stuff there. And in history this has happened. Other things have been worse. We kind of talk about how in society, like, wow, this group that was so great, like the Catholic Church has a pedophilia problem going on in it, or like the Hollywood or whatever, all these things. But it seems to me that they all devolved similarly, right? Something becomes all about trying to serve a good purpose. A bunch of people come in that are trying to be good. It becomes a great place. And then the goodness goes out of it. I don't completely understand it, but evil does seem to go into it, because then archetypically you've got child sacrifice, whatever that is. It seems to emerge over and over and over again. And, it's like, it seems too much that for something that starts out to be trying to be so good, that it has to become so evil, that it seems almost magical or something. Like it seems so, at least poetic justice, but it just seems like almost magical how that happens. I don't know.
No, I see that as a common theme with everything that humans try to do in general. It's just like every tragedy that we see throughout history has always been committed through with the best intention at heart. The striving for either utopianism or German idealism. And yeah, I think that's it. The lesson to be learned from all that is the folly of man's ego, really. Regardless of how much you try to do something that's we see as ideally better or utopian, it always ends up like the Babel Tower.
Well, that's why holding the tension between the both and the and of reality. We are both animals that have evolved potentially. You guys could disagree, and yet we have the capacity to be in the image of God, whatever that fucking means. So it seems we can, like I said earlier, transcend the dualistic nature to a degree enough to punctuate, but then we never fully do. I don't know. It's like a wave comes and no one catches it. It's like
Kurt,
shit.
from American Time Machine. Did you ever go to church? Like, do you ever do like the Lord's Prayer? Or like deliver me from evil. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you heard that one?
Yes.
Okay, so like when I went to Catholic Church recently with my mother, they've changed it. Do you know the Catholic Church has changed the prayer? They don't say that anymore. Did you know that?
They're run by a bunch of commies.
Okay, they say, deliver us from the evil one.
Huh.
So I wonder, what do you think? Do you like it or hate it? Like, how does it make you feel to change it from deliver me from evil, deliver us from evil, to deliver us from the evil one? Like, what is it, better or worse? What do you think?
It's hard for me to say if that's better.
Okay, well, what's it mean? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if I can fully. I mean, the meaning does seem significantly different. So I don't know. You could chew on that meatball for a while. Relevant to the discussion, I spend a lot of time. I get to observe a lot of animals, and that's pretty cool. And they're like semi-wild. And now I just kind of get to meditate, basically on what a lot of Rocky Mountain elk do. So. People have chased a lot of animals out of their habitat, and we are also animals. We're part of the animal kingdom, and we don't want to see ourselves as animals a lot of the time. But I think that's part of our regression as a species, is the fact that we refuse to accept what we are. There's like a famous quote behind that too, but whoever the fuck it was. But anyway, we get to observe these animals, and it's pretty fantastic. We drove a lot of predators around out of Pennsylvania and North America, such as cougars, mountain lions. They're the same thing, but also wolves as well. And so we get some problems when we chase out a lot of those predators, and we don't do anything about the other invasive species like elk. Yellowstone is known for having a huge elk problem that ended up eating all of their shrubbery and grass, which caused erosion and caused basically all the roads to collapse because they didn't have any plant life. So when it comes to evaluating what animals do and what, it's good to think of them. What is their function? So I think, people, we might have been dictated by nature to have a function, but it's easy to be kind of blind to what that function is. So in my view of being able to see what these animals do, like deer and elk, we kind of have a habitat for them, is that they serve a function. And most of these species, they have that function of keeping other species in check. And so when we remove a certain element, such as wolves or cougars, from that, it turns deer and elk, for example, into invasive species that can end up, having this yo-yo effect where their population explodes. They eat all of their own food supply, and then they all end up dying. That's actually happened in Florida as well. So anytime we start tinkering with these things, we end up in a scenario where we could definitely harm ourselves without even realizing it in the long run. So I think there's ways you could tie this into how disease affects us as well, and how all of these things can be refined back to the core spiritual elements. Like if we had to define greed as a phenomenon, greed is a spiritual phenomenon. It doesn't make any sense to really redefine greed as just an emotion. Greed is a phenomenon, and how else do you define it?
Couldn't it be a psychological aberration?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like we're trying to be fancy.
No, I mean, like Jordan Peterson's, not to go way off. He's like, there's a 15% deviation in Jewish brains. And it makes me go, was Abraham sensible when he was seeing things?
Well, that's how we just interviewed nephew Joseph Smith, and he was talking about he thinks he has a genetic disposition for seeing things, or miracles, one or the other. So
you should keep talking about the elk, but I just was sitting there, it's like, the human issue is to tend to metamorphose practicalities into story to the degree that we believe in a myth that might not even be practically accurate. And I'm not like a material reductionist, so the fact that I'm saying
yeah, I mean, Philo was, in Philo during early Christian period was like, we must imagine God without quality and therefore without body, and we have to imagine that God did not breathe through his mouth into the nostrils of man, and we must imagine there must be a deeper metaphor here. And so deconstructionism started with Philo, and I think a lot of that's also because the Greek mythological character, so Greeks believed for a period in the things that they said. They're like, oh, those are the gods, but that's a long time ago, and they became pretty relatively intelligent, and so they and mechanically inclined and philosophically aware, and Stoic atheists started to emerge. And so eventually what they did was Stoic atheism grew so quickly, so much faster than anyone could anticipate in Greece, that it superseded the rest of the religion so fast that everyone for several generations very quickly said, well, we're heritage Hellenic, but this is a mythology. And it very quickly became the mode of thinking that these things are myths, not actual persons, like Zeus is an actual person. And because of that, it was so fast when Christianity emerged, because after Paul couldn't convert, like a lot of people are like, you're not even part of our group, dude, like get out. Like, so Paul was like, no, but I have God talk to me, like, because he thought he was Joseph Smith or something. He goes off to Italy, he's trying to get to Italy so he can convert all these people. So the Greeks, when they get onto Christianity, they're like, oh, this is good because it's got a monadical, this is before the Trinity, this is a monadical source for demiurges that are producing the universe, and we can imagine that as being consciousness. And so they very quickly Platonic philosophy or mid-Platonic philosophy started to embed itself in the understanding of Christianity, and Christianity became a Greco-Hellenic philosophy-based thing for centuries until it spread so fast, so far again, that it got to places that were run by cultic, druidic pagans who believed in actual mythologies. And so Christianity then again became a fantastical religion like we're more familiar with. But then there was Erasmus, and he's like, no, Jesus wasn't a magical character, he was a human. And so Christianity and mythology goes back and forth from being taken from any religion, from being taken from a place where you have intellectuals believing in it, to being converted so fast that the intellectuals aren't able to actually anticipate the demand. So all these people are unable to understand what they're believing in, and they're teaching each other, which creates this weird echo chamber of whatever, like Catholicism.
It's like Chat GPT bots talking in a foreign language to each other, and we don't know what the fuck is going on. I mean,
can I say something about the Catholic prayer, the Lord's Prayer?
Yeah, please do, because I do want to get into that.
Because I can't find any like official change to the part you were talking about. There is an official change to the part which lead us not into temptation. Well, apparently Pope Francis changed that to "Do not let us fall into temptation," because the original would imply that God might lead people into temptation. So that's the only change I've seen that's official. And I also have to say, like, I grew up Catholic and I grew up moving all the time. So I went to Catholic churches all across the United States, and you'd be very surprised how different they are. Like a Catholic, like going to Catholic church in like South Texas among like Hispanics.
Right.
It's totally different than going to
there's
Catholic
better
church.
food.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to ask just one thing. Is there anyone who at the very end does not say Amen or Amun?
Amen. I've never heard Amun, but that, you got a crazy accent. That might be something.
No, I mean Amen. Are there any variants where they don't say that at the end? That's what I'd be interested in.
No, I think they're always referring to Amen Ra. Yeah, that is the Amen that we're referring to when we say the end. But the thing about that is because
Amen refers to Amen Ra.
Absolutely.
I had no idea about this. Holy shit.
I mean, it's supposed to mean like the Omega, the end, or this is true, or verily I.
Right.
But really, it comes from Amun Ra, and it's because this is here we go. The Sanskrit Aum also shares like roots with it, so it has to do with like Amun himself. Amun means like Amen means what's it like the Mn is like Mn. It means where's like
so be it. It means so be it, according to what I'm saying.
Yeah. So something like that. So it's like so be it, or like
putting a period on the end of the statement. They're like fucking officially, thank you gods,
right?
Whatever.
But like so like that's the word is the name, the word is the action of God and everything. So and we've got a lot of Egyptian mythology that's made its way into Christianity, but it's been
Isis,
lost.
Ra-El, Israel.
I mean,
yeah. I see the relation between Om and like Amen now, but like it's like man, that's always so obvious. It's like why didn't I consider this before?
There's a lot of things like so. One thing like people, I think like I mean, if I'm going to be an apologist for religion, it's probably going to be for Catholicism to some extent because I think it does a lot of good holding on to really important value, like and particularly like the feminine, the divine feminine. It's everyone right now all over the world is like, oh man, I want to become like New Age and like we got to talk about the goddess and the divine feminine. Not everybody, but the ones who are, you should just check out Catholicism because it's all about the Madonna, right? Like in the Hagia Sophia.
That's also a good point. There have been at least been two reports, one from Germany from an interviewer I somewhat I'm familiar with or spoke to myself, and also in English, and both of them claim to have been, let's say, more or less MK Ultra victims that were supposed to be graduating into what they call mothers of darkness. And what I just like to get to here is that, I mean, look at Hillary Clinton. That's probably another topic. No. But that I'm just want to say that because people always talk about how do not patriotism, patriarchy, and so on. And I just always say even the most crazy male or whatever has a mother. And something really went wrong along those lines. There's also an interesting series by Michael Tessarian on female Illuminati, just for anyone who's interested in that.
You gotta be careful with like understanding symbolism though, right? Because if you think about it, like Mother of Darkness is the most prime form of goodness, and the Illuminati would be repulsed by the light. Like, so the light is this character in the darkness that's created when Sophia spoke, right? So when this happens, the sonication upon the water produces light, and the light's separated from the monad, right? So God, in the terms of the matrix or the matrix, which is Sophia, and you can call it other things, but that is wisdom. And wisdom's in Proverbs and in Book of Solomon. It says that, it refers to wisdom as this like feminine archetype that is created by God, and perhaps associated with in early Christianity, it's associated with the Holy Spirit. It's not necessarily that the Holy Spirit is feminine, but often the Holy Spirit is considered wisdom, and Logos is originally considered wisdom until it becomes Christ. So it's like Superman and female Superman, to things, the Holy Ghost.
I love Holy Ghost, the dance rock band, the two Jews from Brooklyn. If you guys don't know about that, get on Holy Ghost with an exclamation point. They got some of the most killer fucking tracks. I think they're part of DFA Records. Just for the record.
But yeah, I think we get confused though because people are like, "Oh, darkness is the bad one," but like remember the obsession with the Illuminati. Well, just if you think about it, it's like an intuition thing. Where
Well,
people
the
are
mutual
afraid of the dark.
necessity of it, though.
Of course, that's part of the game. Don't look into the darkness because that's where the interesting stuff is hidden. So those that sit there, they can remain there and do whatever you don't know about.
You stare into the darkness long enough, it stares back.
Do you ever sit in your you've been in your home so long that you need to get up and get a glass of water or you need to get some food, but you know where everything is. And if you're cleaning your room and you can walk down do you ever just leave the light off because you know where you're going, right? So you don't really need to see. And if you already know where you're going, you can walk in the dark.
It's Neo.
You just don't want to wake your
third
parents
film.
up, dude.
You don't need to see Neo. Just cut him out.
When I was really young and I didn't want to wake anybody up, yeah. But otherwise, why not turn the light on?
I don't know. I just don't see it's not as valuable as it seems like it is, And I think that we obsess over light.
Remain in light, according to fucking a Brian Eno produced Talking Heads album. That's well worth.
It's not valuable until somebody leaves something on the floor you didn't know about and you trip and fall on your face.
And
Jack
also
Parsons Legos.
Yeah, and I mean, one archaic thing maybe, but I think it's true, at least from what I can observe today. People are attracted to light. They are attracted to fire. If you would have a village, there is a fire in the evening. Most people.
I'm attracted to your sexy accent, dude.
It's pretty good, isn't it? Someone asked, is philosophy Sophia? And no, philosophy is philia, which is the Platonic form of love. So it's just to be the admiring and
brotherly Philadelphia love.
Yeah, of Sophia. So the love of Sophia is what a philosopher is. And so they're saying when people say, okay, what religion are you? And you say, well, I'm just
I look up wisdom's skirt.
Yeah.
That's basically the trip, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the funny thing I think we're getting all around it is have you guys ever seen it's an Irish film company that made Song of the Sea, but the first one was called The Book of Kells, which is kind of getting into information, knowledge, how do you pass it down, churches, Vikings, gold, all this craziness. It's a good kids movie. But long story short, basically you have culture being transcribed through, basically oh, this guy had a third eye, and then someone was like, no, he had 5 hands. I think we're all in agreement. I mean, just kind of try to wrap all these tendrils up of the Hydra of thought. There's a whole lot of ins and outs, but it seems that there's a polarity board game. Hey, Freemasons, they got that much right. And that you get to, in an ecclesiastical sense, go through the wheel multiple times. The fool's journey. You're not just staying in a duality. You're not staying in a monad of duality. Even the darkest person, whatever, Hitler, gave kids candy that he liked. And even the best person, Mother Teresa, writes journals or whatever saying, I fucking hate this job. Right. So
Mother Teresa used to traffic kids with
that's what I'm saying. It's darker than we all think. And we all tend to, but it's easier for the human mind at this reductionistic level. If you guys are into Peterson, the gorilla, with the basketball thing, it's we just don't see how it is. And we see what we can associate. And there's been a long lineage of associational inheritance. And we like playing games. And culture's one big fucking game.
That's what Buddhists call the Maya, but essentially it's the reason why everyone calls reality a fucking hologram.
I thought it was because it was like a quantum light thing. I thought there was an actual physical I don't know enough about physics to talk about this. Andreas, you might be able to help me. But it's if you take a Visa fucking eagle, you can get a quantum a bit of that depicts the whole thing in itself. Right. So it's the universe in a grain of sand, Zen kind of thing.
Right, but it's abstract. It ties into ancient themes of the Maya or
So were they just describing technological things with a spiritual jargon?
Yes, essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Got it. Because of our post-internet, post-industrial age, we analyze everything from a technological.
That's all it is. You're describing things from a technological perspective. Is all. It's like if someone obsessed over how potatoes grow. They're like, no. It's like doing all this stuff under the ground. You're like, I don't care. I grow potatoes, right?
Would you take candy from Hitler though, if he offered it to you?
I would take his money. I would make him give me money and from milk money. I'd make him give me his milk money. Yeah.
If Hitler's the reason why he had Skittles. Yeah.
Hitler's the reason why we have animal rights.
Is why we have what?
Animal rights.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's the guy that first started it all.
Wow.
And interstates, I think, highways and all sorts of shit. We don't have to go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We talked about, hey, Hugo Boss is a great designer. They were stylish, but their ethos was horrifyingly off.
I do though. I'm kind of curious about the evil one thing still, because like I did hear it in church several times now with my mom's church, and so I'm pretty sure the Catholics do that since St. Francis. Like, I mean, I don't know when the last time, Mark, you were at a Catholic church, but have you? If you listen for it, they said, "Deliver us from the evil one" now, and I've heard it for like at least a few years. Like it's been going
They
for.
do the same thing with how
Do you go to the same you go to the same church though?
I've gone to a few different ones.
Different states?
Yeah, actually, I went to one in Maryland, and they did it. I went to when I was with Tim. I went with Seamus from Tim Cast, and we went to a Catholic church in Sydney one.
Yeah, I gotta ask my aunt because she's the one that's like.
So let's for the sake of it though, consider this. Let's say the church is doing this. Like we've changed it from, and I always liked it. I'm just putting that out there. Deliver us from evil. Wherever it is, how little it can be. It's just like little bits of evil might be around.
It might be the same
evil
logic.
one, which is terrifying because it's the freaking evil one, but it's also separate in a sense. It's like I am evil sometimes, right? We have original sin. So to say it's the evil one is
But that's just old Georgie acting in you.
It sounds exactly like the same logic behind changing "lead us not into temptation" to "do not let us fall into temptation." It's like maybe "deliver us from evil" is making it seem like God is the one who puts us into evil.
Yeah, it's so much better. Lead us not into temptation.
I definitely understand the concern though about like because this could be lead into a tangent about double speak and whatnot. But John Mulaney, the stand-up comedian, mentioned this in one of the stand-up specials. How like the Catholic Church, whenever a priest would end a sermon, but they will say "Peace be with you," and also with you, right? That was said for the longest time, but now they changed that with you as always or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't been to church in a long time. They're changing a lot of crap.
Right,
But
which ties into Raphael's.
That might just be a Wittgensteinian kind of evolution of terms.
Right, but this isn't just exclusive to the Catholic Church. We see iterations of like the stuff like this happening all over, which ties into Raphael's points on like how history is taken over and usurped. I had a Singaporean friend that mentioned to me briefly that the same thing is happening to Lee Kuan Yew. He's essentially like the father of Singapore, right? His legacy is what the Singaporean people follow to a T. With that being said, since he's long dead, they started to slowly change his quotes to mislead into something else. Everything changed into double speak essentially, so they can argue within the gray area of semantics, within the margin of plausible deniability, on terms of how to orchestrate certain populations to do certain things.
That's what the devil did. A quote originally. He's like, "Are you sure you will die?"
Right.
Really?
That's the whole demonic pact with Solomon.
But like again, we got like an Erasmus version of the story. Oh, what's up, Sam? Sam the puppet? Oh, he's having interweb discussion issues. Sorry, buddy. Well, you know what? Hey, we love the stripper money. Thank you very much. If you want to come, if you can make it work, that's great. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
Huh?
I don't think there was a train of thought.
Dang it. Okay.
We're the Mexicans entering America on the train of thought.
Well, the evil one to me seems like it's a really big deal because you're changing everything about what the paradigm is, and what it is that you've got this idea of original sin that we're doing these things now. It's become a part of us, and if you're removing that and saying like we're just constantly naive in the Garden of Eden still, I think you're ignoring like a major factor of what it is to be human, which is that we've changed. We have the fruit of knowledge. We also are mortal now and we die, which sucks. But part of that is we are little gods, and like in a sense that die little, like this, we're limited, but there's something there that's more powerful. And if we're just constantly playing sheep, and then so this crusader idea, okay, and that's the other thing is from Phosphore, but the crusader idea that we're servants, and so once Catholicism is being converted to people, they're like, okay, you have to do it, you have to submit, you have to get on your knees, and these are people that are already on their knees. Like, okay, what's going to happen when I die? Well, if you're good, you'll get to be a servant in heaven, right? Otherwise, you'll go to hell. But you're a servant still. And I think that paradigm has made its way into so many people. And even this idea of the mechanisms of the celestial bureaucracy, because then you start to think about these Platonic philosophers and St. Thomas Aquinas says that God is the unmoved mover. Let's try to science it up a bit. So if God's the unmoved mover and has this divine plan, you don't pray asking for bicycles. That's rude. What you do is you don't ever ask God to change God's plan, you mortal fool. You thank God, you pray, thank you, God, every day, and ask him to help you, to understand God's plan more. That's all you're allowed to do. So Calvinism emerges, which creates more racism, because you're like, well, clearly, you must be in a caste system because God wants you to be there. And it just continues to get worse and worse. Plus Erasmus's translation of Lucifer, because he doesn't translate the word Lucifer. He leaves it as a capital L. So now we've got this title, which is never a name. It just meant Venus, or Phosphore is the name of this, like it's a star in the system. So now we've got these stories all combined together, and people are like, what's going on? And there are 20, 30, 40 different versions of the church. The Ebionites were Jews that before Paul, when they said, go away, Paul, they followed Jewish law, right? So when Paul converts a bunch of people that are not Jews, they're like, yeah, but do we have to cut off the ends of our dick? And like, no, it's fine. You're fine. You don't have to follow all the, actually, it's fine. And then they're like, but we're still doing that over here. And Paul's like, well, you don't have to anymore. Like, no, yeah, if I did it, I think other people should have to do this, So the Ebionites continue to follow Jewish law, while these people who've never been Jews before are like, well, we don't, like, let's just take the thing that says we're saved forever. So now it's this group of people that believe the atonement of their sin, because they're believing the idea that, like, if you buy a woman or a chocolate bar, you have to pay for it. You got this kind of group of mindset. And they say, okay, well, how do you deal with the kinds of horrible things that I've seen? Well, you sacrifice a god. Oh, okay. So now you've killed a god, and the blood of the shepherd is your immortality pass. So you create the satanic religion masquerading as Christianity, right, quote unquote, which says it doesn't matter. You can actually be a pedophile all your life until you're 99 years old. Just don't become a Mormon. But like, you're forgiven for any sin other than that, right? Of course. And you just have to, take the blood of the sacrifice. Just wave around this symbol of the murder of this person, and then, or this god. And then when you think about that, like the idea, it's the exact opposite of this guy who came and said, hey, there's a problem in government and state, that we can do these rituals without the temple. We can do this ourselves. The tabernacle is what Moses was using. We can build a tent. We can do it together as friends, and it'll be better. And check out this other guy, John the Baptist. I think he's cooler than me. He's doing all this washing people's instead of burning people's. I think we could actually make that the whole ritual. And so if you get to the origin of the story, it's like, it's very different. There's nothing about Lucifer at all.
Yeah, because the Septuagint never contained the word Lucifer at all, and I'm also more so convinced the title of Lucifer came from Lucifer of Caligari.
Who's Lucifer of Caligari? I don't know that one.
That's a good one. I recently checked that out. Please go ahead.
Oh, so the story of the fallen angels and all this stuff, like from my understanding, briefly talking with David Ewing, was that Lucifer was one of was a saint, he was one of the higher ups in the Catholic Church, very beloved. But at one point, when the Protestant Reformation was happening or something, I don't know, something was happening. There was a need to rebel against the Catholic Church, and Lucifer of Caligari followed suit, bringing his followers with him. So this is where you get the story lore of God's right hand man, God being the Catholic Church, Lucifer being the right hand man, taking his followers to rebel against the church, the fallen angels. The story matches up.
Right. And again, remember, from in this period, the Pope is referred to as God. So if it's God says this, right?
Right.
That's very interesting. And so this is right around the time of Diocletian and Constantine. Was it 300 something you said? 370.
Not sure. Not too sure of the timeline, but I think this had to do with something with.
Who's sure of the timeline?
Honestly. Right. Remember the flamenco stuff? Yeah.
Like, that's just crazy.
Dude, when it comes to the Lord's Prayer, I'll always say it the way I was taught. I'm never going to say it different, because that's just
right.
But at the end of the day, all it's really doing is adding more detail, making it more clear as to what it means, because it still meant the same thing. It's just now, instead of leaving it up to interpretation, it's like, let's be more specific.
Right. Yeah, it seems actually, this is interesting, I guess. Maybe I hate it for the wrong reasons, because if it's true,
I understand why you hate it. I kind of hate it too.
But if it's true that Lucifer is not the right thing in the Bible, then maybe we're supposed to accept that we've been taught wrong. It's not Lucifer the way we were taught, and that this is a made up.
Well, I also think the idea of like being able to be forgiven, I don't really have a problem with that either, because what do we truly understand about why people are evil? I mean, evil could be just like a disease of the brain in some way, you know?
Sure, but what is forgiveness like? So again, like the idea of atonement, right? So like, does atonement matter to you or not? Like, if somebody destroys something, do they have, or take something, do they have to pay for it? Do they have to?
Well, that's technically what purgatory is about, ain't it?
Is it? Is that a Naraka? Is purgatory
that's
Catholic kind of hell? That's a timed hell, right?
Yeah, that's for people basically to atone, I guess. You can look it up. What is purgatory?
I mean, every religion in the world has some concept of the spiritual realm being in different tier sections, right?
Basically, unless you're a saint, everybody's going to purgatory.
Think about that. So this is really like, I want you to explain that explain what you believe about this. When people
I don't
die,
believe it.
well, okay, all right. Well, like according to the lore, calm down. What's the lore here? That like when you die, unless you're a saint, what happens?
You go to purgatory, and basically, I mean, look it up, because I'm not an expert on this shit, but I know you go to purgatory.
Well, unless you get declared as a saint by the Pope, you definitely get burned one way or the other.
Purgatory is like a long bus ride where you just constantly.
I mean, so I don't know, because I've heard that's
slap
limbo.
yourself in the face.
What's the difference between purgatory?
Well, read about it.
Okay, purgatory via the Anglo-Norman and Old French.
Or maybe look up Catholic purgatory if you want to be specific to Catholic purgatory.
Ooh,
if we're talking about Catholicism.
I'm
sure there's a lot of different ideas about purgatory.
Orthodox have it too, but I don't know. I don't think that the Protestants really believe in purgatory.
Yeah, the Catholic Church holds that all who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfectly purified, undergo a process of purification, which the church calls purgatory. Go ahead, keep reading. You want me to read it?
I love your voice.
So as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter the joy of heaven, Catholicism bases its teaching also on the practice of praying for the dead, in use within the church ever since the church began, and mentioned in the Deuterocanonical book to Maccabees. The church gives the name purgatory to what it calls the after-death purification of all who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfectly purified. Yeah, so basically, if you're not a perfect saint, everybody's going to, because no one's going to be pure enough to enter heaven. So that's what the idea of purgatory is, a purification.
Except for us perfect saints, right?
Yeah,
there's a concept within Eastern religions like Bon and Buddhism as well, Hinduism, where like when someone dies before they are reincarnated, they are put into like a holding cell type area, which you can call purgatory. So yeah, this theme is present everywhere. So I'm assuming there's some validity to this, but I'm more so I don't think everybody goes to purgatory.
Pretty much, dude.
But more so, well, according to Catholics, right? I'm more so convinced of I'm going by the lore of all the religions. Well, I'm going by lore of my understanding of this is going by what every religion corroborates.
You said
the general idea is that
interesting.
If you never let go of your ego to the extent where you can be put in a position to believe in God, you'll be stuck in the endless cycle of samsara.
It said limbo is like being on the edge of hell.
Yeah, and they said, but there's the edge and boundary of hell in the afterlife, but they no longer believe in limbo. Limbo is no longer a thing.
Well, limbo is always kind of like a bad thing. If you're going to go in limbo, it's a bad thing. If you're going to purgatory, it's not technically a bad thing, because unless you're a saint,
the general understanding of considering every world religion is that you put into purgatory if you don't believe in God, or like if
the limbo of the fathers is an official doctrine of the Catholic Church. So they do believe that there was a limbo of the father. They do believe in limbo as a thing. It exists, at least on the edge of Sheol.
Yeah, but then I saw somewhere said limbo is not a thing anymore.
They probably think you don't go to limbo or something. Yeah. But I mean, that's
but purgatory.
Wasn't there even a recent change officially about reincarnation in mainstream Christianity lore? Didn't they also just recently change that officially?
So it said earlier on purgatory, going with that, like anybody that's like friend of of God or whatever, like, so you can be like a really good dude, but if you're not perfect, it's like
right.
You have to be perfect to be in heaven.
Like I'm
which
aware
is
of that. Like having grown up
a
Christian, but
ridiculous standard. Because
So
Yeah, no, I know.
here's what I remember about Limbo. So Limbo, my dad made it sound way cooler. I mean, a bit horrible. He's like, you ever driving? We're driving like on a straight flat road in a wheat field and it's gray. And he's like, this is what Limbo would be like, but for 1,000 years or something like that. Just boring and long. But like that's not the way Limbo is presented. Limbo is presented as like on the outskirts of hell, on the edge of hell, right? And according to the Limbo of the Patriarchs, despite the sins they may have committed, or despite the fact that they've been, forgiven essentially by this, they have to wait for the redemption of Jesus Christ. And so there's this idea that it's like there's a period of waiting before Jesus comes back, and nobody's going to heaven until Jesus comes back, because it's like a gold cubic spaceship, right? New Jerusalem is a gold spaceship in Revelation, this giant gold cube that comes down, right? It's all measured out like an arc, and people have to like walk up an escalator into this gold cube. That's how you get into New Jerusalem in Revelation. So it's not just like, oh, when you die, you're just there. It's like everyone's waiting for this salvation redemption period.
Right. The thing is, in the context of other religions, to get out of limbo or to enter this, you know how like Pinktrip mentioned how the standard to get out of limbo is very strict. It's bullshit. Doesn't make sense. You have to be a saint, or you can't go directly to heaven, right? But like that standard was implemented to sell indulgences.
Right.
But in context of other religions, limbo is meant for people that they never cared about religion or any spiritual stuff at all. That's what they go towards to learn about everything.
It's all bullshit anyway. I mean, come on.
I mean, yeah, if you imagine though, the idea of your soul in like a simulation theory, it does kind of make sense that there might be levels to what
I think reincarnation makes more sense than that.
Right.
You think reincarnation back into this world makes more sense?
Well, yeah. If it's a simulation that we're constantly being tested, you would run through a simulation. You would figure out what the fuck is going on, what needs to be worked on, and then you would program the next simulation to work on those things.
Well, yeah, exactly. So you put them into another simulation, a different simulation. Yeah. So like another Naraka.
So you're constantly like tinkering with them to try to work out their problem.
But that's different than reincarnating them back into the same simulation. That's putting them into a new world, a new Naraka, right?
Well, okay.
My understanding of theology is you only reincarnate. Well, so the thing is, you're put on this earth in this life to learn a certain lesson. Not really sure what that is, but it's specifically attuned to you. I guess is to work out the kinks, bug fixes in your simulation or whatever, right? But if you haven't let go of your ego to accept any of this, to accept whatever lesson you're supposed to be taught, you are stuck to repeat that cycle over again, which is samsara. Those that never cared for it, but they were still a decent person, end up in some limbo type space.
And there's some sort of connection to karma with this too, right?
So right. The karmic balance stuff, whatever. Yeah. The Kabbalah also touches on this. It's
karma is just physics, though. It's just like the energetic physics.
Well, think of like if you're a racist, like if you live a whole life as like a despicable racist, the next life you might actually be someone who's a victim of racism, something like that.
Right. Honestly, we don't know what the other side holds, but
yeah, it's all speculation.
But from my understanding, every religion seems to have the same abstract concepts mutually corroborating.
Yeah.
I think Andreas is going to go straight to heaven, though. He's an angel.
Well, it only takes 3 miracles, so I figured that's pretty easy. Like, it's not bad. I think, though, yeah, thinking about the idea of ascension or what we're supposed to be working on, like, that's an interesting question. Are we working on ourselves? Like, is it just this, like, Jungian, Freudian, like, this is all for you, and you should work on yourself? Or is it that through correct action, we're able to manifest light and pull it, or darkness, depending on which way we're going, trying to separate like the two.
Working on yourself could mean actually treating other people better and treating other people as if they're yourself.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of that one. I think
the focus is on letting go of the ego. Really, that's what every religion talks about. Is the letting go of the ego is the essential part, especially in Christianity too. Let go of yourself to submit to God, become a servant, that stuff. yeah, essentially follow the same rite of path as like any other religion. Let's say like Buddhism, for example.
Yeah, it feels like Quantum Leap, right? Like you're supposed to,
So-
do this for the least of me. Sorry, you're saying.
I just want to ask one thing. So I'm generally a fan of that idea, and in a way, I would try to be also on that path. Not to, how should I say, be confused by all the apparent separation, whilst although it is one experience. But couldn't this also be in some way like a brainwashing technique to tell everyone, oh, let go of your ego? And then the few people who strangely run those religions are not seeming to let go of their ego at all.
Right.
And the connected question to reincarnation and this general, let's say, spiritual worldview would also be whether one believes in reincarnation or a continued experience or not, because at least in some areas or groups, it seems like they're kind of afraid to die. And I'm wondering, also like rich or seemingly important people, and I'm wondering if they actually are consciously or subconsciously afraid that there may be some repercussions, yeah, I haven't really figured this out yet, but these are like questions. I'm always thinking of the dark crystal Skeksis that talk about, they were rent asunder from the one source, and now they're afraid to die, which is why they are birds that consist of 90% cyberware, basically.
I mean, couldn't it be both though? It could technically be both. Like it could be like the way to enlightenment, but also something that can be abused by governments to control people.
Yes, and you can expect if it's a way to enlightenment, they will definitely abuse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it's again, why are we obsessed with enlightenment? Why I keep wondering, like, is the word light
because
a wrong
we
word?
don't want to be sad.
No, but maybe like
we want to be happy.
But there might be some like being found, like those who sit from the cool dark waters at the bottom of the pond will, know as a colder, sweeter drink, perhaps. And those who never go that deep will, to taste that cold water will never know the sweetness from which we taste. Jehovah One in Subgenius Church is this idea of like a radio being. We think of Jehovah, but Jehovah as a radio being that's trying to enlighten. Like it's going to bring down laser and turn us all into atomic blast and light. And so, yeah, is that great to be all light? I mean, maybe it's not the answer.
Right.
And the alternative to being light, like, so when you talk about, so the other thing is because Raphael had brought up, the idea
isn't there some spark of light, supposedly electrical, when you're conceived too, at least in the material plane? Isn't there also some like light?
I feel like light has got to be important. Like there's no reason not to have light, but light was separate and created in the darkness. And this religion though, so Subgenius, Church of Subgenius, while it's a meme and kind of a joke, it's pretty real, right? The idea that Bob Dobbs shook the hand of L. Ron Hubbard in an elevator and became the greatest salesman that ever was is a great meta lore. But the idea that, what does this church offer? It offers you're slack, you'll have to work a lot, you'll never have to work again, and you'll have ultimate material wealth and power and success. And, that's the opposite of what most religions teach. A lot of religions teach, that you're supposed to give everything to the church, have nothing, lose your ego. But it's like, yeah, it's these ISIS cults that are focused on self manifestation that are all about, becoming more. And is that a good thing or is that an evil thing, or is that the wrong answer? Is it about balance and unbalanced chaos and order? I mean, what do you think about the idea of a religion that's trying to help you become a more person instead of less ego?
The thing is, letting go of your ego is distinctly important for cohesion, which is also how the military runs as well. They reduce you to nothing. They make you feel like nothing, so you just follow orders.
Well, that doesn't sound that
great. Right. So,
Right.
But it's not inherently evil. I mean, there's a lot of theology attributed to it, and whatever. But more so, what I wanted to harp on was, yes, this was a long figured out. This was essentially what MK Ultra was about. It's how they got Charles Manson to start his own cult. Essentially, was playtesting this theme about how to reduce someone's ego for absolute subservience, which is definitely something that the CIA has looked into and which is currently being used actively, especially in our world economy and corporations and also the military. So there's that. Another thought I had was another point that Raphael mentioned was, is life a continuing experience? I'm very much vindicated that it is due to the existence of blood memory. And also, I was also thinking that like with all this misinformation we have about theology, is humanity collectively creating creating a false god through like a tulpa manifestation?
Just regards to the whole letting go of the ego, maybe the question here is whether that leads to empathy or apathy. Because if I'm in the military, you know, I will have no ego, but I will not empathize probably with the guy I'm
right.
harming, right? When I guess many, you know, the Jesus type variant of it would be, or Krishna type variant, I hope would be more towards the idea of empathy, or that's my
Right.
impression of it at least.
From my experience, I've seen both existing at the same time, very dualistic, right? It is by letting go of the ego, is like understanding that the world is not in your control. Those abstract themes, you
I
you
think it,
tend to gain a sense of apathy of like, fuck it, right?
yeah.
But also you do, towards that perspective, realize how finite life is and stuff like that, which also brings you a sense of empathy as well, making you more of a thoughtful person.
I think the idea is to become one with God. Would you become one with the universe? And anything you become one with, if it feels pain, then you would, in theory, feel pain as well.
Right.
I don't know. Let's go. I want to talk about the Gilgul, but first, blood memory. I think people are interested in that. Like, when you talk about blood memory as being, a continuation, what do you mean? And do you mean like psychological memory,
Well, I mean,
or
like
what is blood memory?
Oh,
Genetic.
well, blood memory it's now a documented and academically accepted fact that within
From
your blood
From
that
the Lamarckian, we were talking about Jean-Baptiste Lamarck earlier, as opposed to Darwin. Yeah.
But yeah, essentially it's the concept that like your ancestral, that we all carry ancestral memory through our blood itself, somehow through either the liquid crystallization memory, or something else. Who knows? But yeah,
Interesting.
it's stuff like that which I'm more so convinced that stuff
Yeah,
like
didn't they do some
reincarnation.
studies? Didn't they do some studies on like uh, Jews from like the
The Holocaust.
ancestors? You have like the Holocaust Jews, like they had like higher anxiety or something. So I forgot what the exact studies were, but yeah, they did
Yeah.
studies on this
They're
stuff.
they're trying to receive more reparations from the Holocaust, arguing the position of blood memory. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I thought they did some studies where like they could
Like,
basically, if you were the ancestor of someone who went through the Holocaust, like you had some sort of, they were able to like test it and be like, oh yeah,
right.
they have effects from that, even if they didn't go through it, just being the offspring of somebody who did. Same thing with people like who like went through like the mines and had like lung problems and stuff like that. That gets passed on too, something like that.
Which opens up the conversation towards, do we have collective memory? Is a species based collective memory a real thing?
Well, I mean, how do
Especially
some animals get born like having the instincts of knowing where to hunt?
right. Joe Rogan talks about this a lot,
Yeah,
which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with.
I don't know who's that. Who's Joe Rogan?
He-Man. Well, okay, that actually does lead into the Gilgul. So we talked a little bit about reincarnation, and it's an interesting fact that in the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical religion and philosophy, that reincarnation is a major tenet of the belief structure. A lot of people don't understand that about Judaism. It's not every part of Judaism. In fact, a lot of atheist Jews, but in the Kabbalah, it's a major thing. It's called the Gilgul. And the Gilgul is also, Gilgulim or Gilgalai Ha Neshamant. It's a concept of reincarnation through the transmigration of souls. It's a little different than the way we normally think of it from like Eastern perspective. In Hebrew, the word Gilgul means cycle or wheel, though. So it is rather similar if you think of it from that perspective. But the main difference is the idea that the human body and the human soul, right? There are parts, and there are 613 parts to the human soul. Let's see, the 613.
How do people figure this stuff out?
Well, so the way that they decide to do it is that they like look at all the parts of the body that were being measured at the time, right? And so there's literally, organs, bones, tendons, veins, arteries, and systems, and they accumulate to 613. So the way that they looked at it was like, clearly this is a manifestation of God. These parts are metaphor to 613 other parts. And so the soul similarly has 613 parts as well. And so 613 mitzvot with 248 members, 365 nerves in the human body, right? 248 limbs. They start counting is all that they really do. But then you get to this idea that the souls is really 613 parts are more, they transmigrate separately. They're more nomadic, and they're confederated in you. But as time goes on, parts of you will process, and not every part. And you have to probably go through 613 incarnations often, or something to that effect, in order to process each part of the soul, focusing on one part every time. And yeah, absolutely. And that this accounts for why some people die young, or some people, like babies are born that are like, it's like really traumatic for the family. A lot of the time the rabbinical scholars account for this by saying this baby is ascended, there's 612 times, and this is they're there because you guys are all part of that soul. And so you're there to help, and that they're there to help you process the part you're processing. This is vein or nerve ending or artery in your system.
So the Jews believe we have a limitation of 613 reincarnations, whereas
not necessarily, because you might not actually process everything.
Gotcha.
Well, and it's not every Jew; it's just the Kabbalah.
Right. So more so the East mystics.
Yeah, the Czechs particularly are all about that.
That's funny because the Eastern perspective is either twice or it goes on forever.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the other thing is like you're not the same person really, because a part of you is in another 613 part soul the next time around. So parts of you ascend, like parts of you continue to go on, and they leave. So then you're like,
that's
actually
so weird.
So like it gets harder because you're the parts that haven't ascended.
Yeah,
yet,
let's say your arm ascends or some shit, but like,
but yeah, so I find that interesting, because the idea that your soul can be made of pieces, I think that might in a sense it might actually explain something, because we're made of pieces and we think of ourselves as one thing, but we're like a bus, a bus of bacteria and our gut.
They also believe that the soul is stored in the tailbone, don't they?
Well, I think that the idea that there's like the key, or like it's tied, it's like nailed to this sacrum, essentially.
Right. It's like the final chakra or something.
Yeah, but I don't know. Kurt, you fell asleep? No, I'm just kidding. How you doing?
He's bored of us, man. He's like, shut up, you idiots.
No, I think he's counting how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, right? Like, what's up?
No. Is there a question?
Just got anything to add?
Yeah, what do you think about the soul, reincarnation, working through life? Do you think that we're processing stuff generation by generation?
Oh, yes. Well, I think that ties in to what we were discussing earlier. Like, if there is something out there just using us all as tools to express itself, then yeah, like it's totally just reincarnation. That's all it is. It's and my main point with the elk and the deer, it was that we don't have to view all these things or ourselves as just fighting for life. It doesn't have to be just viewed as survival. It can be viewed as functionality of being a guard for the whole of the expression. So these deer, they might just not be looking at their environments and saying, oh shit, how do I survive this? Like, no, they're an organ to that environment. So in some way they are necessary. And we, as maybe predators or other parts of the ecosystem, we play that function of saying, okay, we're going to make sure that you are in check, and there are other forces keeping us in check. And that might be the problem with humanity, is that there's not as many forces keeping us in check. Now we have brains. But as far as that coming
keep each other in check pretty well, I think, so far.
Yes.
This week, man. I don't know.
Yeah, as far as reincarnation, then yeah, that I think that's the main point here, is that we like to think that we're individuals. We live in a hyper individualistic culture, but we only have so many words we can use to express ourselves. And, language evolves too, whatever. But if we think that we're unique and that we're an individual, if it try to write down on a list of personality characteristics that make you unique. None of those characteristics are actually unique. They were words that were given to you from a collective. So
Xirtus, I was gonna say. So I kind of want that one. Sorry, keep going.
That isn't to say that you don't have a soul, but we need, there's so much that you could say about what it means to have a soul. And nodes, there's a soul web, and everything has that meaning of being a soul, like the soul of a butterfly, the soul of an elk or a deer, of a wolf, of a cell in your body, you as a collective, your soul as well. Those souls are distinct and out there, but I think in Hindu practice they would say that they're all meaningful. They're all the representation of God in and of themselves. That those are the end product, So, but that's those souls can intermingle and also, create new souls, and you do see them as distinct, but that's where there's kind of like an inversion point, whereas they're all so distinct. They're so distinct and unique that they all just rebind together, and it's all the same thing. It's all the same God and connection all over again.
The perfect metaphor is the deer. I always got in trouble because like, look at all those deers over there. And be like, it's deer. It's deer. And like, yeah, but there's a lot of deers, aren't there? Isn't it? No, it's deer. So the idea that you can have a singularity of thousands of deer, or like billions of deer, or one deer is really interesting, right? And that you could say you love and care for deer because you have to kill deer occasionally, to keep the deer alive. I mean, this is what's going on in Japan, right? They have a surplus of deer because they let them live too long. Now they have to sell sliced deer meat in the park. They don't know what else to do. They're just like, they give you money for killing deer. It's like the baby seals in Canada. It's crazy.
Yeah. So with that being said, so life has apparently been around for hundreds of thousands of years at least, and
that's an adorable puppy.
We're just going to
He's 11 years old. He's not a puppy.
And that puppy won't die. It'll be the only thing that doesn't die.
He's also a reincarnated monk, according to the Tibets.
I believe it.
I love the Tibets. I want to go to Tibet someday. But yeah, so, and you could get in all sorts of things. There's the Buddhist book of The Living and Dying. That's one of the lamas wrote that book and was supposed to give a reinterpretation of what the Book of the Dead means, but also give some functional context. And there's some cool things that I think you can draw out from Buddhism. They try to get a little sciencey about what happens to the soul when you die. And so they say, I think it's like your soul hovers in the ether for 49 days before it decides that okay, you're back in the system. You go back into someone's birth canal while someone's having coitus, and that's what your soul does. It's wild. I mean, I think it's kind of true, but anyway, that's what they believe. And but during that time period, it's like you have a heightened ability to for your soul to purify, and maybe you can be semi-conscious in that realm and then ascend to the spiritual plane. Well, to the spiritual plane of the Buddha, to where you don't have to be reincarnated into that system or have a body, I guess, or you just become part of that Buddhahood. But you can kind of re-enter that spiritual plane at you can kind of enter into that plane at will after that point, because you've ascended to the point where you can take conscious form, but you don't have to. And it's so hard to conceptualize all this because everything's constantly moving and we're shot out of a cannon, straight towards our deaths, and it's hard to even talk about or conceptualize or have a thought because it's happening so quickly. But yeah, it's cool to think about, I suppose.
Wow. I recently was in Mexico and I met a guy who's like a very old man but like a brilliant man, and he gave me this book, The 14th Rosary, which is pretty interesting, and it's a a spiritual readaptation of the Rosary, and it's changed it because if the Rosary, it goes like, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, blessed art thou amongst women, blessed the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. In this version of it, it goes, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us, sons and daughters of God, now and at the hour of our victory over sin, disease, and death. And Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit, which I think is pretty interesting, like the way that it was presented. Anyway, he also was telling me a story about in 89, because I'm about the same age as his son. It was like 89 to 90. He's like, we'd had a kid or two already and he was done. But he'd been hearing about what was going on in Tibet, and he was really interested in the Tibetan monks. And like obviously there's issues with Dalai Lama, but the monkhood itself, right, is like, you could think of Thich Nhat Hanh and like the Vietnamese Buddhas. Like there's a lot of really important sacred practices and rites that they hold their priesthood. And they've got the Book of the Dead. It's essentially coming from Egypt, and the likelihood that it's coming from the Tartars, because they say that they were the Tartars that brought it, that they're the lost 12th tribe that went to Tibet. It holds some water. Anyway, the Chinese government was in the process of destroying Tibet. If you remember the bumper stickers, Free Tibet, that was the big time for that. And he was like, oh my gosh, they're not letting these monks have kids, or they're going to kill them. Anyway, the monks were saying that they were going to try to start reincarnating outside of Tibet. That became, and that's why the Dalai Lama said, like, when he was next born, he wouldn't be in Tibet. He would make sure to be reincarnated somewhere else. And they've built temples to this establishment, the Tibetan temple in Santa Cruz, which I used to hang out with as a kid, the one in Colorado, and the CIA, again, this is the Dalai Lama Freedom of Information Act payroll, like made sure that the Dalai Lama was paid and that they built these temples. So the CIA was involved in doing this.
Holy shit.
So reincarnation, anyway. So, and this guy, by the way, like married to the granddaughter of the governor of Jalisco from during the Cristano War period. But he says, I pray about it. And I forget how he goes about this, whether he contacted them or if they just prayed about it. But he said that they would be willing to take a soul. I think they actually talked to the Buddhists, like the Tibetan monastery. Like there was like a thing where you could like sign up and audition to be a family to receive a reincarnated soul. And they applied, and the Buddhists liked this family. And so he ended up having a kid with his wife. And they were it was already like later, so pseudo miraculous, because like they weren't planning on it and they didn't think it was necessarily even that possible at that point. But if it had, and then it just all worked out. This kid's born, and this whole life he's like a monk, it's like the most obvious thing. Like, granted, maybe he's thinking it, but he doesn't like their food. He doesn't like to eat meat. He instantly is a vegetarian and is like still a vegetarian. He's the pictures of this kid in his face. You can see all of his life. He looks like a Tibetan. He smiles like the monks smile in these pictures, with a big old grin and everything like that, even though he's just a Spanish kid. And then at some point there's Buddhists. They're like, he's 15 or 12, or I think he's like 12. And they're walking through, and there's like Tibetan monks that are, for whatever reason, in Guadalajara. And they walk up to them and they talk to them. And they say, or no. They were in like Colorado or something like that, but they happened to be, they're like, wow, there's a Buddhist temple here. I think it is. So they talk to them and like introduce the kid, and they're like, tell the story of how this happened. And they're like, yeah, like obviously, they totally they believe this and they accept this, that this kid. Then there's a photo of these monks with them, and they all look like twins. You know what I mean? They look with their faces, even though the rest of their, like, they're wearing outfits and he's wearing normal clothes, but you can just see like the soul of this kid is just like, it's perfectly imbalanced. And as they're leaving, to his mother and his father die. Like his mother gets hit by a car, and his father has like a heart attack within the next like month while they're there near the temple. and is super traumatic for their family. But they're under the impression then that their souls got put into the temple, right?
Wait, so how would you direct whose soul goes into what body? That's fucking interesting.
Buddhists totally believe in magic.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. It's but
No.
like how Marvel has basically Tibetan monks doing like the whole Doctor
No,
Strange
look,
thing,
I get it and all, but like if this was true, and if this was an actual industry that's been going on of where people can allocate different souls to different bodies or whatever, then this would justify the entire transhumanist position and legitimize the shit they believe in.
Which is why they made the Matrix, I think. Probably.
Yeah. It also makes perfect sense why the fucking billionaires think they can live on forever.
Dude, $1 billion Buddhism.
If this really was the case where you can pass on someone's soul to someone else, like to a different family, and like know where it's going, and then end up being born to look damn near exactly the same as your previous body, that's fucking. If that was true, then this whole Alex Jones transhumanist shit that he's been going on about is completely true and is possible, which is scary to think about.
One thing you should read about in that book, I forget who the author's name is, but you can search it. But they talk about the rainbow body. So like,
yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah,
how
like when you get cremated, you produce beads.
Well, what I read was different than that. Essentially, there would be these monks that would get so good at like meditation, and they would achieve enlightenment over their lifetimes, where basically they would see their death approaching and start meditating, and they would meditate all the way up until the moment of their death, and their death would essentially be such a sort of purification, and it would translate into their bodies, and essentially in that period of 49 days, if I have that number right, 49 days, they would be in their temple or place of death. They would leave the bodies there to allow the soul to have that transition, but their bodies would reportedly totally dissipate, and they would turn essentially into a rainbow, like make the entire room prismatic for that entire 49 days. I mean, that's probably compared to Western civilization, that's one of the wilder claims that would be out there. But there's these guys adhere to pretty well, and that's why
Right.
I think fantastical claims are pretty fun. I think the West sees these claims as like a sort of competition. Like, no, that's not science. How dare you?
Right.
No.
But
I don't know. A lot of people look at the Buddhist stuff as science.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, Andreas, but the whole thing when you were mentioning everybody, I wanted to mention is as you mentioned, the West perspective, oh, that's bullshit. Buddhists believe in magic, whatever. I was under the same position as well, because like my favor towards empirical documentation, but there is a recorded phenomenon of biophoton luminescence, and that's with that being real, like the fact that humans can actually produce light through some form. Let's call it biphoton luminescence. If that's true, then something like the rainbow body could definitely be plausible.
Yeah.
I put it on private chat, the biophoton luminescence stuff.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up
I think they measured it from plants too.
Yeah, I'm definitely convinced this whole fucking rainbow body shit definitely is possible.
This is like an article on National Institute of Health. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, so if we're that, if we're like entertaining these ideas, it's interesting when you consider like the rituals that like the monks have, like because the ceremonious magic is to control where the soul goes when it leaves the body. So they build a temple, they send it from the temple, they do certain rites and rituals. You spend your whole life training because it's kind of like a DMT acid trip thing where all of your dreams come true right away. So you have to like make sure you're focused, and when you die, you're only thinking the pure thought of where you're supposed to go. Like it's very Star Wars, right? It's what Qui-Gon Jinn's doing or something. And I mean, it's weird because those rites, again, we're talking about the Tartars leaving Egypt or something. If they're going and they're bringing those to Tibet, you've got the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You've got in Belgium the Mormon Book of the Dead from Mormon, which is Mormont. It's like Mount Mor is the mountain of the Moors in Belgium, and they have a Rosicrucian ritual there where they bond soul, right, so that you can have essentially celestial marriage, like if you want to be bonded so that your souls are part of one being in the next world, right? So there are these like kind of interesting ceremonious magical rituals that all seem to focus on the same idea of like when you leave, and then there has to be something else set up that like it's like where lightning strikes has to be the tallest point or something. Seems interesting. Well, we're 2 hours in. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Israel? What? No, you're good?
Yeah, we didn't talk about Israel much.
Good job. I'm really proud of that.
Well, I got something. Can I say something about Israel real quick?
All right, sure. Yeah, exactly. Dude. From the heart. You know what? Well said. Well said, bro.
Absolutely impeccable.
Yeah,
well said, bro. Okay. All right. Well, everybody, you can check out Act Like You Know 26, which is where you can watch some of the best videos right now. Actually, I'm pretty impressed with these. Raphael's put up some interesting talks. He's got a dozen, I think, or more talks with David Ewing Jr. And I think you even have the History is a Lie Part 2. Is that the newest one that just came out yesterday?
Yeah, that's actually highly recommended because there it becomes a little bit more clear, the whole division again between Pharaoh and Moses and the connection between Pharaoh and humanism. And, going a bit into the different layers, I think it's quite
I really want to expand on the Jesuits, Pharaoh and Koran episode. I thought that was rather interesting, particularly talking about the Farisi family. I would recommend to people watching the Jesuits and the Pharaoh episode, and just consider this is great. This AI art you're doing God's work here. That's really good. And yeah, I don't know if you guys like good videos, but if you do, there's this guy I know named Ping Trip. I don't know if he makes these great videos. Honestly, it's some of my favorite videos that are ever made. They're pretty hilarious, and he's actually a deep guy. Like he's got deep eyes and he's got deep thoughts. So you want to check out his Ping Trip 2 is the other one. Or is that the wrong? Oh, that's his YouTube.
Yeah, check out my last live stream where I reveal that Joe Biden is an animal abuser.
Really? This is going? Why don't you ever have me on for these fun things? Oh, that's why, because you just want to talk about that. Yeah, okay. That's cool. That's cool.
You'll be on maybe not this Sunday, but next Sunday.
Let's do it. Okay. All right. Well, and American Time Machine, because if you listen to music, I have a friend, American Time Machine. He does the best music. This is the kind of music I listen to. If you want to be cool like me, you listen to the American Time Machine. Manufacturing. Game Over. Is that the new album? Game Over. Yeah. Dude, super good. You can't hear this first song. There it is. Super ambient, super mystical. If you're trying to like work on thinking, if you want to like open up a portal and talk to Sophia.
Oh hell yeah.
That's a vapor album.
It's super vaporous. It's as vaporous as the Celestial themselves. Well, I really like.
If I'm sorry. Vapor, a lot of people, it's a very niche genre, I guess, but like I try to do a lot of different things within that genre because I think it's a little bit unexplored. So I thought that was a really interesting path to go down, to see what you can do with a lot of samples from like 90s video games and how far you can take them, and more of legitimizing the sounds themselves than just doing something more on the simpler side of just like slowing down the tempo or spacing them out, but like really more validating that timbre, I suppose. But yeah, sorry.
Don't be sorrowful. Never be sorrowful. It's one of the most beautiful albums. I love what you said. It's ambient vapor. It's symphonic vapor. It's intellectual vapor. It's more than just a wave. It's like a tsunami. It's great.
Can I ask where's Seth?
Seth is he didn't want to talk about Israel. I feel like it's a hard week for a lot of people, and like I even felt bad that we even brought it up at all, because I was really trying really hard to focus. I think we did a really good job focusing on what matters, and not to say that we don't like pray. We pray for the future. We pray for peace. We pray for people.
Pray for all of mankind.
And I pray for the devil, because Mark Twain said, those of you who pray for all those like Christians out there, who amongst you remember to pray for the devil who needs it most? So, Lord, like take care of that devil.
We missed you, Seth. Come back
We
next
missed you,
time.
Seth. We missed you, Seth. And Douglas, we missed you too. I love you.
Yeah, too.
I can't watch Loki without thinking about Doug. He's just
and Sam, the little weird puppet guy.
Sam had some internet problems, but he sent a stripper money. So after this, fried chicken,
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, love you. See you next time. Peace.
Hell yeah.